podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy. This is episode number 7, and today we're going to speak on neuroplasticity and learning. So to jump right into it then, what is neuroplasticity and why is it important? And why is it important in learning? So neuroplasticity is basically how your brain is going to reorganise and restructure itself to facilitate new learning, or facilitate even skill development. So if you think about it in terms of, I'll go for something simple like playing an instrument, it's your brain has to change to actually help or let you play that instrument and let you pick up the chords and the notes and be able to put it all together and to be able to coordinate it. The same goes for learning any type of skill or learning any type of new material. The brain it can't just take it in and store it. It has to change, and things have to be consolidated and formed, and new neurons have to be attached, and new neurons have to connect each other to basically so your brain can draw on that new material or new knowledge or new experience whenever you need it. So to think of human progress over the last 100,000 years or the last million years, all of our progress has been a consequence of two things, and that's neuroplasticity itself and how the brain can change and reorganize, and then technological advancement as well, so moving from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. But all of it does come back to neuroplasticity, because if we can't learn new skills, and if the brain doesn't change and let your body work on these new skills and let it coordinate these new skills, then you're going to be stuck with the same attitude, same behaviours as from when you were born. Now, we're lucky as humans in that we actually are able to change our brain over our entire life. Now, animals are as well, but they get stuck into patterns earlier in life, similar to humans, and then they re-emphasize or really build or structurally build those patterns so that they get stuck in them all the time. And that's why routine is so important as well. So how does it change? Following on from that, how does it actually change over time? Well, when you're young, between the age of, say, just when you're born to about 5 years old, your brain is like plastic in terms of you pick up everything that you take in. It's like a sponge. So you pick it up and it changes. So it forms around the environment that you're in. And this is, a lot of the time, is activity dependent plasticity. So you get these new neural connections that are really rapidly formed in children because they have to pick up stuff, they have to learn stuff very fast. So they pick up stuff from just observing it, from being immersed in it, and from interacting with it. And that's their environment. So everything that's around them is going to be taken in some way or another. And they need this multisensory stimulation to grow and to mature properly. Now, the genes underneath that are going to set a basic framework or a foundation. And genes are obviously dependent on a lot of things, and they're going to be dependent on your history, or your family history, I should say. So your parents are going to dictate the genes that you have, but the neuroplasticity and how your brain and how you interact with your environment is going to change how your personality comes out and what genes are going to actually be expressed, because some turn on and some turn off. Now, that isn't my area of expertise by any means, but if they do, genes will turn on and off through new experience. So early on in development, the main things that children need to pick up would be motor skills. They need to learn language, they need to learn emotions and visual things like what's dangerous, what's not dangerous, and then memory, and also behavioural control. Now, as they encounter the same things over and over again, these neurons in their brain are going to get stronger and they're going to be interconnected as they use them. So that builds that foundation for new learning. So they have to build these initial, like your motor skills, your emotion, your visual field. You have to build these as a foundational level, but then what you learn in that first 0 to 5 years old, that's what builds a foundation for the rest of your life and how you can learn things for the rest of your life. So overall, one of the most important things in neuroplasticity is repetition and repeating the same things and then changing it slightly so you're able to adapt as well. Now, initially we would have thought up until really the 90s that your brain was fixed once you became an adult and that you couldn't change it after that. But then they found that there was actually stem cells in the brain which help it adapt, and they found that you were actually able to develop and mature into, these stem cells were able to develop and mature into functional neurons, which improved your ability to learn new things, and form new memories. So this ability to learn things rapidly, actually, let's say with 0 to 5 is your main time for building that foundation, but it does go on till you're around about 25 years old, that you can pick up stuff just from observing it, just from being immersed in it, and just from being around people that are doing it, or around in environments that it's occurring in. But once you hit that 25 mark, and it's obviously going to be different for everybody, but once you hit that 25 mark, then your patterns are more ingrained and your neurons aren't as keen on changing, because they have to build the foundational things. They evolutionary, by the time you hit 25, you've probably ingrained a lot of the patterns that you're going to be using anyway, and a lot of the emotions, a lot of behaviors. So it takes a lot of energy to learn new things, and the brain is always trying to optimize the amount of energy that it uses. So if you're going to be falling into routine, if you're going to be doing the same things all the time, it doesn't need to build new synapses, and it doesn't need to build new neural patterns. But the positive thing is, even though when you hit 25, you can actually still build those new patterns. It just takes a lot more focused attention to do it. So this podcast is going to be mostly about how to improve your learning ability and how to improve neuroplasticity over the age of 25. Now, the same techniques will be used can be used by people who are under 25, and they're going to pick up things a lot faster, and you'll find that you'll pick up things a lot faster at that age. But if you can nail down some of the techniques that I'm going to talk about, and if you get a good understanding of the ideas and the theories behind what I'm talking about, then you can implement them in your own life to try pick up a new skill and try learn new things. And you'll see how different behaviours are associated with better plasticity. Now, before I go into detail on that, I'm going to talk a small bit on the positives and the negatives of neuroplasticity, because with any positive, with any change, there can also be negative as well. So we have to take that into account. Now, the positives of neuroplasticity are improved learning, or faster learning speed. You're able to pick up skills faster. You're able to change your behavior easier, and you're able to change your habits a lot easier, or a lot faster. But the negatives of neuroplasticity actually go into things like bad habits. Picking up bad habits are because of the fact that you've done this thing repeatedly in response to a certain stimuli or environmental cue or whatever it is. It could be something like biting your nails. You've built that and you've ingrained that pattern, and that's neuroplasticity. That's ingrained that pattern in your brain. So let's say if you are nervous, a lot of people bite their nails, and that's a habit they picked up, and that's what the brain reacts, or how it reacts when you get nervous. So that's a negative of neuroplasticity. Now, other negatives include things like these are maladaptive behaviors, I suppose is what you could say, behaviors that aren't optimal or aren't beneficial. Or so another one then on top of that would be like chronic pain. And if you're interested in that, if you look at my podcast on the pain experience, which goes into a small bit more detail on pain and what it is and what's causing it and all that. But in that podcast, I talk about peripheral sensitivity and central sensitivity, and that's changes in relation to changes in your nervous system in relation to a significant amount of input. So a lot of threat coming into your body all the time, and that's maladaptive neuroplasticity, in that your nervous system has changed to be more sensitive to pain. But I won't go into much detail on that here, because if you go back, I think it was number 4 or 5, I talked on the pain experience. And then on top of that, other things would be like a brain injury, where your brain has been damaged and has to reorganise itself, and it might pick up bad habits of that as well. So you'll see that in stroke, where they have learned non-use, where you ask them to lift up your, let's say, left arm, and they'll reach across with their right and they'll lift up their left, instead of, because they haven't been able to lift up their left, but that's learned non-use. So instead of trying to use the brain to pick up that arm, they use the opposite one. So that's maladaptive again. And lastly, then, one that I suppose it could be closer to a lot of people that might be listening to this podcast would be addiction. And addiction is maladaptive neuroplasticity. Now, I'm not an expert in addiction by any means either, so I will leave that up to the experts to discuss it more. But it is a response to a certain stimuli again, and your brain is looking for that, I suppose, out, or it's looking for pleasure in some instances from repeated use, even though you know that, like internally, you know that it's bad for you. you're looking for that dopamine hit a lot of the time. So that's some of the negatives of neuroplasticity. And for the majority of people listen to this podcast, it'll be bad habits will be the main one that you'll want to get rid of. And that's what you can, if you take the principles that I talk about in this, you can use that to override bad habits. So just two other things then, talking about neuroplasticity and negative neuroplasticity, just before I jump on to the next topic, will be that one might think of a negative experience that could be encoded even though you don't want it to be, would be if you were in a car crash. So if you were in a car crash, you'd bang and you were in the driver's seat. And I know this myself because personally I was, when I was a young lad, not that I'm that old at the moment, but when I was younger, we were 15 or 16 and we were driving a car and we went around the turn too fast basically, and it hit a tree and the car hit a wall then and it crashed. And I was not able to sit in the front seat of a car, the passenger seat of a car, with someone else driving without gripping onto something, without being nervous. I was always telling people to slow down. I was very, very nervous and I was real anxious when I was sitting in the front seat of a car. And that's a maladaptive behaviour. I picked it up and it was pure fear because of the fact that it was such a significant emotional event in my life at a young age that it was encoded that being in the front seat of a car could put me in that same situation again. And we'll go into a bit more detail on why that is and what's released with the acetylcholine and all that, and how that can happen and how you can actually override this in just a few minutes as well. Another form of negative neuroplasticity would be childhood trauma or early trauma in childhood. So significant amounts of stress early in your life, and even let's say between that when you were born to 5 years old, significant amount of stress there will actually drive pathways, like lower neural pathways in your brain. Now, you don't have to worry about this too much or details in it, but what that will do is it'll direct your brain's plasticity in response or in favor of like survival mode is the easiest way to think about it. So you're always in survival mode, and things that can affect that would be like abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse when you're younger, even emotional abuse, and then poverty, divorce in the family, as well as, depending on obviously what age you are, as well as maybe a significant event or a couple of significant events that happen as you're growing up. So bullying as well would be another one. And that will condition you to be more anxious and more defensive and reactive over playful because you're in survival mode and your brain has coded survival mode as its primary driver. Now, the really interesting thing in this, and this will kind of go into my next point, but your parents then at a young age actually act as a buffer for the stress. So when you're stressed and you run over to your mother, your father, and they pick you up now, that buffers that stress and it takes that out of survival mode. So it's like when you're older, it's like using a breathing technique to reduce the amount of stress you're in, or aerobic exercise to reduce the amount of stress you're in. They act as that buffer, your parents do, from a young age. So that brings me on to my next point then of what affects neuroplasticity, what affects your ability to learn, and what improves your ability to learn. So starting out, just because I touched on it recently there, would be stress. So as I touched on about the child and how if they have a lot of stress early in life, that affects them and puts them into a more survival mode because their brain is wired for a more survival mode. If you think about that as you go through the rest of your life. Now, as I was saying, when you get to 25, it does affect you in terms of a small bit more, in that it's harder to change it. You need more focused attention. But there's certain things that even if you use that focused attention, if you don't take care of them first, it's going to be more difficult to learn things. So that's why I bring up stress as the first one, because it's so important and it does really have long-lasting effects. So when we talk about stress, the main things I want to touch on would be that prolonged stress is actually going to increase the activity of a place in your brain called your amygdala. Now, your amygdala is that fear processing center, and I've talked about this in meditation and how meditation reduces the size of that physically and makes you more relaxed or put you in a more relaxed state. But prolonged stress increases the volume of your amygdala and increases the activity of it. Now, because your amygdala is your fear processing center, or it is your emotional processing center of your brain, when that's highly active, it's going to reduce the activity of a place in your brain called your prefrontal cortex. Now, your prefrontal cortex is involved in forming new connections with different areas of your brain and bringing them all together. So that's really at the center of neuroplasticity, that part of your brain. So to improve your ability to learn, you want to get that prefrontal cortex working as effectively as it can. And you nearly want to, I suppose you want your amygdala working as effectively as it can, but you don't want it overworking either. You don't want to be fearful all the time. Because if you're fearful all the time, you feel you're under threat all the time, you feel you're in danger all the time, then the prefrontal cortex won't be as adaptive to positive change. It'll be more adaptive to negative change. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to enhance or improve positive neuroplasticity. And there's a good few ways you can do that. And that's what my basis in coaching is. What I do with all of my clients is that we're looking to build new habits. We're looking to build better routines. We're looking to get rid of pain that they may have for or long-standing pain. And to do that, what we have to do is we have to get the brain to change. So we work a lot on different areas of their life, and really what we're working on, if you break it down into an overall view on it, would be different wellness approaches, or we're looking at different wellness approaches and wellness practices. So as your brain is going to adapt and change to new information coming into it, what you want to do is send it positive information, but you also want to put it in an environment that's rich in sensory information, it's rich in emotional information, and that causes, I suppose, intellectual arousal. So you're more attentive or more alert to new information coming in. So as with anything in the body, you need an optimal amount of stress, but then you actually need a good amount of restorative rest. You need rest so the body can, or the brain and the body and the nervous system can change and adapt. So simple things or simple wellness practices such as taking on a positive mindset and improving your emotional awareness and building on daily habits that you have associated with wellness and associated with health will all send positive information to the brain that you're making positive change in your life. And if you're sending that information to the brain, it'll be willing to make change. So by doing that, you're setting up a foundation to build and to learn new things. Now that's just, what I'm talking about here is foundational stuff. And it sounds it sounds like I'm making it easy to say you need a positive mindset. But there is different things you can do to improve your mindset so you become more positive. And it is taking on that glass half empty, glass half full approach, but trying to look at things so that the glass is half full and trying to take positives out of small things. That's really will help you build that positive mindset. Now, other things that will really improve your mindset, improve your wellness and health. So really simple one would be exercise, and aerobic exercise or resistance training. That will build a great foundation for neuroplasticity, because so you're setting up the foundation there that new neurons will be built and that your body needs to change, and that's the very first thing. But after that, aerobic exercise and exercise itself is involved in the maintenance of fight or flight states, because your brain is, let's say, your commander, and it directs all the activity from your lungs and your heart and your muscles. When you're trying to exercise, you're basically telling your body that you want to put it through stress. So you're getting it to work towards a certain goal. Now, when you do that, because it's voluntary, when you do that, it gives you a sense of influence over your environment and the different conditions around you. Because you're actively choosing to put yourself into stress or a stressful environment, that gives you this top-down control. Top-down control is from your brain down, as opposed to reactive, where it's your body up. Or I suppose that's the easiest way to describe it. But your brain works most effectively when your mind, or when you feel that you're in a position of control, and that you feel that you are control over your environment and that you have authority over your environment. Now let's look at that through the same lens, but in a different, through a different example. So think about if you're on social media, if you're watching the news all the time. What that's doing is that's sending you acute stress, because it's attention grabbing. It has to be attention grabbing for you to stay there all the time. So it tells you the worst things, or it gives you the worst stories, or the best of something. And what you're doing then is you are taking that external stimuli or external stimulus, and you're looking at your environment, and that's triggering you and sending you into an activated state, because this acute and chronic stress over time builds up. You don't have any control of what's going on in the news, but you're still taking it in and it's still making it your problem. And if it's making it your problem, even though you've no control over it, that's putting your body into an activated state and a stressful state because it's trying to figure out a way of how you can fix it. Now, aerobic exercise takes you outside, or exercise in itself takes you outside, and it gives you the chance to overcome those negative effects of the acute and chronic stress. And there is hormones involved in it as well, but it's because you have that top-down control. It gives you the control back. It gives you the authority over what's going on in your environment. You can stretch yourself as much as you want if it's your brain that's stressing you, and then as long as you obviously give it enough rest. But if it's something else from the outside or from your environment that's stressing you, it's a lot harder to control unless you get rid of it completely. And there is an argument for a guy that works on social media. There is an argument for like really putting it away and taking in less information every day. Moving on from exercise, then the next thing to look at it would be your general emotional health, and it follows on from what I was talking about stress and how if there's too much stress coming in from your environment, how that's going to affect your ability to learn new things. So if we look at your emotional health in general, you need to take into account that biopsychosocial model. And the biopsychosocial model, it's a big word, but all it is how your biological body affects your psychological and your social life as well. That they all intertwine and they affect how you perceive life and how your body reacts to different things. So it's those three things together. So biological, psychological, and social. When you mix them together, that's how your body reacts, I suppose, is the easiest way to describe it in short terms. So when we're looking at emotional health, then things you need to do is maintain a positive mindset, and then you want to improve your social behaviours. So maintaining a positive mindset is an overall goal, obviously, and you want to be trying to be as positive as you can in every situation. Now, there's obviously some situations that it's difficult to be in, but it's training yourself to look towards the positive as opposed to the negative. Now, other things that will help you with that and things that tie into that, promoting social behaviours or positive social behaviours, would be things as simple as volunteering and social bonding. Like volunteering makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy about what you're doing. You're helping somebody else, and it's giving you that control of helping somebody else as well. And if we tie that back to how that affects your relationships with other people, it gives you more empathy. So you be more empathetic with people. So as a knock-on effect, you're going to be better able to converse with people. You're going to be able to build better relationships because you're more empathetic as well. Now, on top of that, you can do other things such as journaling. Psychotherapy is another one, or working with a psychologist. And they're all going to work on building that positive neuroplasticity and building your ability to learn and your ability for the brain to change, because it feels safe and it feels secure. So trust, security, and love are going to be three huge things that impact that. And if your brain and if your body and your nervous system feels like it's secure, it feels like it's loved, then it'll be more open to change and more open to adapt. As opposed to if it's in survival mode where there's a lot of stress coming in, it's going to be more open to just trying to stay alive. Now, on top of that, other things you can do, it comes back to if you're going to be looking to promote overall emotional health, you need to look at other things. Now, obviously exercise is going to tie into that, but environmental enrichment is an excellent, it's just a term, but it's another excellent way of promoting better emotional health. And that just basically is any activity that's going to stimulate your sense and it's going to challenge your cognitive or motor abilities. Cognitive obviously being your ability to form memories and to think and to plan, and your motor ability would be like picking up a new skill, like kicking a ball, swimming, something like that, playing golf. On top of that, then environmental enrichment would be also enhancing your social interaction. So when you're meeting with people, now the volunteering does come into that, but things as simple as playing instruments, dancing, exploring, finding new places, going on trips with people, volunteering, obviously I said that. And really simple one that you wouldn't think of is like aromatherapy, or taking in new smells, like smelling flowers, taking deep breaths outside, like opening up your lungs, really breathing in, taking in your environment around you, seeing the beauty in smaller things, and then just like changing your house, having your house cleaner, putting it more visually, so it looks a lot better, obviously, because when it's cleaner, but visually putting colors that are stimulating positive emotions. And then I think that one that I mentioned about aromatherapy is interesting because it's so simple. It's just getting lavender or getting things like that around your house, smelling flowers, really simple changes that enrich your sensory or enrich your senses. So you're taking in a lot more sensory information, and then you're resting and you're relaxing again. And that all they promote brain development when you think about that, all because it's all coming in, it's all new, it's all novel stimuli, and it's positive. It's all positive stimuli. You're going at it with a positive mindset. You're not going over smelling flowers and thinking that it's going to smell like shite. Like, you're going to go over and you're smelling those and you're taking all that in, and then you're looking at the horizon and you're looking at your environment around you, you're looking at nature, and you're taking all that in, and it makes you feel better. So it's all about enriching that environment, making it as positive as possible. Other things then that would work to promote a positive mindset and promote a neuroplasticity in learning would be, and you've heard me talk about it before, but meditation. So meditation is, because it turns off that threat system, because it helps you become more aware and more, it builds your attentional control, and your attentional control is obviously involved. As I was saying, you need that focus, and focus is attentional control. That's what it is. So meditation helps you build that, and if you're able to build that, and if you're more effective at it, if you're better at it, you're going to be able to pick up, you're going to be more focused on a task, and your brain is going to feel that it needs to make changes, so you're able to do that task better next time because you've spent so much time and so much focus on it. So meditation promotes that and it builds that. Now, that's just one simple thing, and that'd be mindfulness meditation. And I did a podcast on different meditations. I think it was the one just before this, so it was number 6. If anyone is interested, definitely check that out, and I go into a small bit more detail on the effects of it. But other types of meditation be like loving kindness. When that builds compassion, it builds selflessness, builds empathy, and it improves your relationships. And then transcendental meditation as well promotes like calmness, restful alertness, and it also builds your self-awareness. Now, when you think about those and what I had mentioned earlier, you'll see how they all improve your ability to learn, because the brain is feeling safer, it feels more relaxed, it feels like it's able to, or it feels like it'll be secure enough to change itself, and it'll feel like everything will be okay, I guess, if it changes itself. So it'll be more open to change. Now, if you're really nervous, if you're really anxious, and all these like negative emotions coming in, then the brain will be less likely to change. So when you think about that. Now, when we could push it on after that, then you're looking at like nutrition, breathing routines, and sleep. So nutrition, you need to think chronic inflammation in the body is going to be one of the main causes of any mental illness at all. And if you have chronic inflammation from eating processed foods, from eating or having a diet that's high in processed foods, then it's going to be under threat, and it's going to be more inflammation in your body, and your brain isn't going to be as able to adapt. So there's looking at things, and I'm no expert on nutrition, but looking at things like to improve your gut microbiome, because if you can improve your gut microbiome, you can reduce that inflammation in your body. So caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, looking at omega-3s and taking in more omega-3s, and they do promote plasticity in general just as themselves. Then you're also looking at probiotics to build that gut microbiome and really build that or promote brain health. Now, when we talk about becoming more secure in yourself, one that you would forget about, and it's so important, would be physical touch, with or interacting with other people and animals. Now, physical touch itself, as I said earlier, in children, the way it buffers that stress system, physical touch also promotes plasticity because it makes you more relaxed. It promotes healing. It can be involved with pleasure, I guess you could say, as well. And you could think about massage as an effective way of doing this. Massage releases different hormones. You have that analgesic effect in terms of it reduces your pain, and I talk about that in the pain experience. But it also promotes love, and it promotes bonding with another person. And all that physical touch is sending those positive emotions. And that bonding and that love is going to reduce your stress or it's going to combat stress, and it's going to improve your overall health in general. Now, see, if you kind of notice, there's a theme throughout all these wellness practices, and it's promoting that sense of relaxation and security. So anything you can do to do that is going to help promote that setup or foundation for the brain to change. So other things would be that breathing and relaxation, and I talk about breathing in another podcast as well. I think it was 3 or 4, but I'm very poor, I should know these. But yeah, breathing is going to be really important as well, because it helps you get used to and endure chronic stress. Now, breathing is similar to exercise, in that exercise, it's a top-down control of your stress system, and you're able to stress yourself. Now, breathing is the same. So you can control that CO2, control your tolerance to that CO2, and you're promoting that top-down control and promoting the fact that you have control. So it gives you that, it builds self-efficacy, and it builds self-awareness, and it builds self-control. And that can be things also as well, and this goes into the last podcast the podcast that I did on breathing. It activates that vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is involved with turning off that fight or flight system and turning on the rest and digest system. So you can see how breathing would definitely affect your ability to learn new things as well. Now, sleep is probably one of the most important practices in neuroplasticity, or to promote learning. And I'll go into a small bit more detail in a couple of minutes, but sleep is involved in memory formation, memory consolidation. And when I talk about this, I actually did do a podcast on breathing as well. It was number 2 or number 3. So it's involved in so many different things, up to waste removal. It's involved in loads and loads of different functions. But in terms of plasticity, because of the fact that you need that focused, alert concentration, that you're just thinking about one thing, and you're really focusing on what you're doing, because you need that, and you need to turn off, because you need both sides of this. You can see how sleep is going to be so important in this, and we'll talk about napping and that in just a couple of minutes. But don't forget how important sleep is when you're trying to learn something new. It's overnight that is actually going to be encoded. It doesn't get encoded at the time, it gets encoded when you go to sleep. And you can check out that podcast if you're interested in that. I talk about skill development in sleep as well, and learning new things. Now, when you look at all those wellness practices and how they're going to really promote neuroplasticity and build that foundation for your brain to change, you need to think about one other thing that's going to really affect that, and put you under threat again, and put you into a state of survival mode, I guess you could say, and it affects the connectivity as well in the brain, and that would be substance abuse. So substance abuse would be counted as smoking or taking drugs or alcohol, and it's basically going to reduce neuroplasticity or decrease your ability to change your brain. So we're trying to avoid that at all times, especially when we're not, I shouldn't say it at all times, but we're avoiding that when we are trying to learn something, because alcohol does affect just in itself, it affects your REM sleep and it affects your deep sleep, and two of them are huge in building new memories, forming new memories, and facilitating new skills, the learning of new skills. So after that, we're going to talk about really quickly on how do we optimize neuroplasticity then. So we discussed what affected it and what plays in. We discussed how to build a good foundation for learning and how to build a good foundation for improving your overall health and in general. So how do we optimize it, and how do I'll get a small bit more specific on different things you can do to accelerate your learning. So firstly, we know to accelerate learning, you need to, especially over the age of 25, you need to dial in on that focused attention. So you need to give all your attention to the task that you're working on. Now, I'm going to use playing a guitar as for the example, because that's going to be the handiest one too, and the most relatable one for a lot of people who've ever tried to play an instrument, who ever tried to pick up something new. Now, you can use these same techniques for anything or any skill or anything that you're trying to learn, but that's just going to be my reference point. So as I said, to change how you feel or act, or to build or to improve a skill, you need an intense focus. You need the intense focus because of the fact that you need acetylcholine and dopamine and norepinephrine to be released around the brain. And when you focus on something for a long time, they are the hormones that are going to be primarily associated with neuroplasticity. Now, the reason that these are released is because they mark synapses. So they mark areas of your brain or neurons in your brain that are going to be connected to each other. Okay, and they're going to mark patterns that need to be used so that you'll be able to do this easier, or it'll be easier to do this and use less energy the next time you do it. Because that's primary concern for the brain, is that if it's picking up a skill, it needs to make it as automatic as possible so it's able to do it without using up that much energy, because it doesn't like to waste energy. So now that you've marked the synapses, you need that bit of repetition so the brain can figure out what ones it needs, and the nervous system, what ones are going to be most important, and so it can really refine the skill. So that's going to take repetition. Now, when you repeat the exercise over and over again, you're going to get agitated, and you're going to feel like you're going to get distressed, I suppose, the easiest way to describe it, agitated and distressed. And that's side effects from the release of these chemicals, because your brain is changing. So when you get agitated, you actually need to dial in on that and focus in on that and play into that agitation as long as you can while maintaining focus. If you're just playing agitation and not focused on what you're doing, it doesn't work as well. You need to stay focused and alert on what you're doing, and you need to work into that agitation slightly. So when you take into account that focused attention, the body needs to feel a sense of urgency. Okay, and you're going to get, if it doesn't have a sense of urgency, the brain won't adapt as quick and it'll be slower to adapt. So you need focused attention, you need a sense of urgency, and you're going to get that agitation at some stage, and you need to push into that, lean into that a bit. Now, when you come back from that, then because you've that done, you have that focused attention, the exact opposite of that is you need to rest. And rest is the most important part of recovery. Now, rest can be as simple as like deep sleep, where you're sleeping at night, or it can be napping during the day as well, because short naps have been shown to support rapid learning in adults. And then there's these other things called non-sleep rest, or it's non-sleep rest. Now, I don't know if that's the technical name for it. This is actually a Stanford University researcher called Andrew Huberman who talks about it a good bit, as well as David Eagleman, if you're looking for another name, and a guy called Lawrence Choi as well. They have a lot of research done on this area. Think about that. You've your focused attention, you've nailed down what you're doing. Now you need to relax from it. You need to shut off. The brain needs to decompress, is an easy way to think about it. So a non-sleep or non-sleep rest could just be taking your attention away, just closing your eyes. Simply, it would be a meditation, I suppose, is one way, but it doesn't need to be that focused. Now, meditation is going to be a lot more focused rest and recovery, and it might accelerate even more so. But if you're just stepping back from the task for a couple of minutes, closing your eyes, relaxing, you're still going to be able to pick it up. And that's really important, because you can only focus for so long, but you need to step back and reset. Now, the reason children are able to learn so fast is that they learn through play a lot of the time. And play basically is you are giving something your full effort, but you're keeping it in perspective. As in, it's not the be all and end all. So when you're trying to learn something, stay light, stay loose, but still be focused and give it your attention. Now, as emotion is also connected to it, you need to give it some type of emotion as well. As in, you need to attach emotions to it. If there's emotion attached to it, that's using a lot of areas of the brain are working together. And the more areas of the brain you have working on something, the better you're going to get at it, or the faster you will get better at it, I should say. So we now know the general principles of neuroplasticity in terms of you need a lot of focused attention and you need to rest. So now we need to look into rest and attention a small bit more. So they find that 3 hours after you wake up and 11 hours after you wake seem to be optimal for learning because of your alertness and your alertness levels. So look to schedule your learning periods in between those times as best you can. Now, you're still going to be able to learn outside those times, but that's just optimal is within those times. Research finds then that learning should be in and around about 90 minutes at a time, and within that 90 minutes it should be broken up again. So it needs to be broken up into that focused attention and rest, because you won't be able to hold your focused attention for 90 minutes. So simple things that you can do to break it up would be if you're focusing, if you're looking at something for a long time, you need to step back and you need to change your visual field, because if you're really looking at something, you're really concentrating on something, your pupils will get smaller and they'll focus on that. Now, when you step back and you look at, let's say, what a lot of the research is looking at now is actually going outside and looking at the horizon, because it really opens up your pupils again and it changes your point of view. And that's just a simple way of resting while you're focused. Okay, so you're you're studying something. Let's say you spend 10 or 15 minutes studying it. Then you step outside, a couple of minutes looking at the horizon, letting your brain relax down. And when you come back in again to focus, you're going to be able to get into deeper focus again. So we're looking for that focus and alertness followed by some type of a rest. Now, another form of rest would be a nap, 20 to 30 minutes, or one of those non-sleep periods where you're just sitting back and you're closing your eyes and you're just getting away from it. But even that looking into the horizon is actually a type of that non-sleep rest. So when you turn off your focus, you're actually, in a way, decompressing your brain. You're just letting it relax down, and it helps those dopamine levels restore those dopamine levels, which means that you're going to be able to focus again after, and your learning is going to be accelerated after. Other things then that you can look at to increase your alertness would be jumping into an ice bath or taking a cold shower, because that puts it through the roof. It increases your adrenaline, increases your epinephrine, and it teaches you then top-down control. What we spoke about earlier, it gives you that security, it gives you that authority over your environment, in that you're stepping in, you're purposely going into the cold shower, and then when you're in there, you're controlling your breathing. You're not letting yourself shiver, because if you're shivering, if you're able to stop that shivering, it does show your body that you're in control. So an ice bath and a cold shower is going to improve your ability to focus under high alertness, because you're so alert when you jump into it. So you're teaching your body to focus under that condition. Now, other things would be like writing. When you're trying to learn something, writing it down, because the motor cortex is so closely linked to your language area of your brain that which is your Broca's area, or your Wernicke's area as well, when you do that, they're so connected that you're taking in more of that sensory information. And as we said earlier, the more sensory information is, the better it is, or the easier it is to learn. So you're cueing your brain to learn is what you're doing. Then if you're looking at nutrition to improve neuroplasticity, obviously we have to look at that gut microbiome and look at reducing inflammation overall. But you need to think that when you eat, it puts you into that rest and digest state. So eating something heavy before going into learning situation might not be as effective, because your alertness will be down slightly. So time your eating right, and then time your sleep right. Now, looking at like an actual supplement, high quality fish oil is supposed to be beneficial. And then there's another one, L-tyrosine, is supposed to be beneficial as well. I'm not promoting them. I take fish oils myself, but I don't take that L-tyrosine. It's just that a lot of research has shown that it might be effective. But the only thing is that if you do take it, a lot of people seem to crash after it. So be sure to take that into account as well. Few last things then before we finish up. One other or two other supplements that you could say that would improve your awareness, and I'm definitely not promoting this one in any way, would be nicotine. Nicotine actually increases your alertness, and it improves your creativity and improves your ability to learn. Now, we don't want to be picking up smoking because of that. So obviously don't do that at all. Or don't, just take that into account, that it does help promote neuroplasticity. And a lot of artists, a lot of designers would come out and say the same thing. Writers would come out and they would back that. But it's obviously not the way to go, because the health conditions associated with it are not worth the small gain or the little bit of an advantage it gives you in learning. So aside from the L-tyrosine that I mentioned earlier on, there's another supplement made by Neurohacker. It's Qualia. It's supposed to be very effective. Same again, I haven't taken it myself, so I can't back that, and I don't promote it because I haven't done it. One little tip that you can take away, and it's a breathing technique, and it's really only coming into surface now, in that they're looking into it a small bit more. Does it make you more creative? Does it improve your learning? And it's a technique called space-time bridging. So it's difficult to find. You won't find too much information on it. It's coming out of Stanford at the moment as well, and they are looking into it. So there's not a lot of research backing it yet, but it seems to have positive results as of now. And it's really, really simple. It's you close your eyes and then you inhale. So you're taking a breath in and exhaling. Now, when you're exhaling, you are really getting into that breath. So you're nearly looking through your third eye is what they describe it as. So you're taking your time, normal inhale, normal exhale. Now, when you've that done, you're moving into, you're putting your hand in front of your face, you're opening it up and you're focusing on a really small point in your hand and you're taking another breath again. And lastly, then the last breath that you're taking, you are looking away from your hand and you're trying to defocus and you're looking at the horizon and you're taking another breath. So breath on with your eyes closed and you're looking through your third eye. Then you're taking a breath while you are really focused on a certain point in your hand. And then the last one is you are taking a breath and you're looking at the horizon. From my knowledge of it, you're supposed to do one after another. So 1, 2, 3, like inhale, eyes closed, inhale, focus on the hand, inhale on the breath, and then repeat that cycle a few times. So that's just a little simple takeaway for someone who wants to try it. It's supposed to improve your alertness, supposed to improve your ability to learn, your creativity. But if anyone tries it out, make sure to let me know how you get on with that one. So guys, that's absolutely everything from me today. I hope you took something from that. Just a quick run over all the takeaways that we discussed. We discussed first what is neuroplasticity, why is it important, and it's your brain's ability to change. And if you can take control of it, or you can really work with it, you can improve or accelerate your learning, accelerate your ability to pick up new skills, learn new behaviours, new habits. Then we talked about the positives and the negatives of neuroplasticity. And that was like the positives were obviously increased learning speed and able to override bad experiences or create new experiences. But the maladaptive sides then would be like building bad habits, addiction, chronic pain, and then like a brain injury as well, where your brain structure completely changes. After that, we went on to how it changes over time and age. And we were talking about how 0 to 5 is the most effective time for picking stuff up, and you'll just pick it up from being in the environment. Then 5 to 25 is a small bit different. You'll still be able to pick stuff up, but you have to put a bit more focus in what you're doing. And then from 25 on, you really need to focus your attention, and it has to be self-directed. So it has to be self-directed, focused attention, while children will just pick it up from being in the environment. After that, then we talked about what affected neuroplasticity. We went through how stress affects it, how substances affect it, and then we talked about different wellness habits that improve it. And wellness is building that foundation for it. So that was like meditation and breathing and sleep, enriching your environment from smelling different, or aromatherapy, I should say, as opposed to smelling. So aromatherapy, and we talked about doing yoga as well. And then just doing different things to really enrich your environment, like volunteering was the last one. Improving your emotional health, so that's taking on a positive mindset or trying to be more positive in situations. And then lastly, we talked about, or firstly, was actually what we talked about of those was exercise and aerobic exercise and resistance training, and how that improves your top-down control so that your body feels like it's able to get through its environment and it has control of its environment. So you're able to control the stress on your body, which makes your body feel more in control of all the stress around it. After that, then I went on to talk about how to actually optimize neuroplasticity. What are the things that you have to do? And we talked about focused attention then, and went into a small bit more detail on focused attention, how you need to let out the acetylcholine, that dopamine, norepinephrine, and you need to get to that point of agitation. You don't need to get to the point of agitation, but if you do get it, that's your brain changing, and to work into that or lean into that for a small bit. Some people won't get agitated for a long time to be able to cope with it. But some people, when they try to pick up something new, they get agitated early. And you actually have to lean into that a small bit. When you've that done, then you want to step back. You want to go through these non-sleep rest periods, short naps during the day, which may be 30 minutes. And then going into like a deep sleep at night is really going to nail that down. And outside of that, then we were talking about how you can, if you're in a learning or when you're trying to learn something, stepping outside, looking at the horizon and getting your eyes to dilate and open up again, or your pupils, and to defocus or decompress your brain and give you a chance to come back in and focus again. So remember, to maintain focus, you actually have to break that focus and come out for a small while and then go back into it again. So then I talked about that breathing technique, about that space-time bridging where you are closing your eyes, inhaling and exhale through your third eye. Then you are opening your eyes, inhaling and exhaling while looking at a really focused point in your hand, and then you're changing that focus, decompressing and looking at the horizon and inhaling and exhaling and repeating that a couple of times. to aim to improve that creativity and accelerate learning, improve that neuroplasticity. So we covered a load in this podcast. We touched on a lot of different things. I put a lot of work into like the study behind this, the research behind this. Now I'm definitely going to do another one of these on neuroplasticity because I only touched the surface. That wasn't exactly an exhaustive list of it at all. It goes into such more detail and there's always new stuff coming out on it. And it's something that I'm really interested in, is how you can accelerate your learning, how you can pick up things faster and how you can get better at them faster and how to optimize them. So it's something that you're going to hear across every episode that I talk about. And I talk about it with all my clients as well, and how we can do this and how we can optimize it. So that's everything for today, guys. Thanks a million again for listening. I really appreciate you signing in and checking these out, and really appreciate all the comments that people are sending me on Instagram as well. I hope that it's given you some value and they've given you some takeaway from it. If you are on iTunes, I'd love if you could rate it and leave a comment. It goes a long way in promoting the podcast. And then the best way that you could promote it is if you share it on Instagram. That goes a long way as well. Getting that name out there and getting the ideas behind the podcast out there as well. So, but that's everything, guys, for today. Thanks a million for listening. I will be back at the same time again next week. We're going to stick to Sundays for now. Chat to you all soon. Have a good one, guys.